It was the 39th identical lift, a 420 metric ton piece of roof, a €9 million insured crane, and a routine procedure. And yet, on November 27, 2013, the routine became a catastrophe. In seconds, the 1,350 metric ton machine at São Paulo's World Cup stadium buckled, killing 2 men and costing $48 million. Investigators found no mechanical flaw. So how does a perfect machine on its final lift suddenly fail? The answer was a fatal gamble, hidden just inches below the steel. This is Hard Hat Industries, where heavy machinery shapes the world. Before we can understand how this giant fell, we must first appreciate what it was. The machine at the heart of the São Paulo disaster was a Liebherr LR 11350. To anyone in the heavy lift industry, that name commands respect. This isn't just a crane, it's a marvel of German engineering. A crawler crane with a maximum lifting capacity of 1,350 metric tons. That's the weight of 9 fully grown blue whales. It's a machine designed to operate on the grandest scale. When fully rigged with its longest boom and luffing jib, the LR 11350 can reach a maximum hook height of over 720 feet. That's taller than the Washington Monument. It moves on 2 massive crawler tracks, each 43 feet long and nearly 8 feet wide, designed to distribute an immense operating weight of about 2,400 metric tons. Powering this behemoth are 2 Cummins diesels delivering a combined 1,354 horsepower, purpose-built for the unique demands of heavy lifting. These engines don't just lift, they power a complex hydraulic system that controls the boom angle, slew, and winch operations with millimeter precision. Its components are so large, they defy conventional scale. The main boom sections, built from high-tensile structural steel, are wide enough for a person to walk through. The slewing ring, the massive bearing that allows the crane's superstructure to rotate, is a masterpiece of metallurgy, engineered to handle millions of foot-pounds of torque. A brand new LR 11350, depending on its configuration, can cost $25 million before it ever lifts a single beam. It is a masterpiece of engineering, stability, and control. And for the Corinthians arena, it was the only tool for the job. The construction plan was ambitious. Build a massive 6,500 metric ton steel roof. The Liebherr was tasked with lifting the enormous truss sections into place, each one weighing 420 metric tons and spanning over 240 feet. By November 27th, it had already done this successfully 38 times. The final lift, the 39th module, should have been routine. The machine was perfect, the crew was experienced, the procedure was proven. But what happens when a machine built for perfect control is placed on a foundation that offers none? The most powerful tool in the world is still only as strong as the earth it sits on. This is the central, unavoidable truth of the Corinthians arena collapse. It was not a mystery. It was a failure of the most basic engineering principle played out against a global spectacle. The date was November 27, 2013. The time was 12:53 p.m. Workers were lifting the 39th and final roof module, a massive, pre-assembled steel truss weighing 420 metric tons. The entire project was under a microscope. FIFA had set an unmovable deadline of December 31st for all 12 World Cup stadiums to be complete. The pressure on the construction consortium, led by the Odebrecht company, was astronomical. Workers reported grueling 12-hour shifts 7 days a week, with vacations canceled in a desperate race to finish. This environment fosters go fever, a dangerous mindset where procedural shortcuts seem like reasonable risks in the face of an impossible deadline. And then, it rained. For days leading up to the lift, São Paulo had been hit with heavy, persistent downpours. The construction site, particularly the area on the stadium's east side where the crane was positioned, had become a saturated field of compacted soil. It wasn't just damp, it was compromised. In soil mechanics, saturation means every void between soil particles is filled with water. The water acts as a lubricant, dramatically reducing the internal friction that gives soil its strength. This is where the gamble was taken. A union leader later claimed a safety engineer on site warned his supervisor about the ground's integrity. He voiced concerns that the soil was not stable enough to support the crane's immense load. This wasn't a casual comment. It was a formal warning about ground-bearing capacity. Odebrecht and Corinthians denied any warning was ever given. The lift proceeded. The Liebherr LR 11350 is a precision instrument. Its lift charts, the complex calculations that tell an operator what it can safely lift at what radius, are all predicated on one non-negotiable fact. The crane must be on firm, level ground. Its 2,400 metric ton operating weight, plus the 420 metric ton load, exerted a ground pressure of several thousand kPa. A crane's tracks are like snowshoes, designed to spread that force. But on saturated soil, that principle reverses. The ground beneath the right side crawler track began to lose its cohesion. It started to liquefy under the load. It began to give way. It was not a sudden sinkhole, but a fatal, uneven subsidence. One side of the crane sank just inches deeper than the other. A 1-degree tilt at the base doesn't sound like much, but for a 600-foot boom, that tiny angle translates to a massive deviation at the hook, a horizontal shift of several feet. The entire load was now pulling the boom sideways, a force known as an eccentric load. The boom's steel latticework, designed for pure vertical compression, couldn't handle the immense bending and twisting. The steel groaned, then failed. In a matter of seconds, the crane and its load toppled, crashing down onto the nearly completed eastern grandstand. The 420 metric ton truss sliced through the stands and smashed a giant high-definition LED panel. Fabio Luiz Pereira, a 42-year-old crane operator, was inside the cab, directly in the path of the falling steel. He was crushed instantly. Ronaldo Oliveira dos Santos, a 44-year-old assembler, was resting nearby, tragically in a prohibited area, but one he may have felt was safe. He too was killed. Why was the lift allowed to happen? It's a question that haunts the project. A decision where the pressure of a soccer tournament was weighed against the fundamental laws of soil mechanics. The ground always wins. Before we can tally the financial cost, it is essential to state the true, irreversible price of this failure. The loss of Fabio Luiz Pereira and Ronaldo Oliveira dos Santos, two men who went to work on a high-pressure job and never returned home. That is a debt that can never be quantified. But to understand the full scope of the gamble, we must examine the financial fallout, a cascade of red ink that began the second the ground shifted. The $48 million figure from our title comes straight from the official IPT report. Let's break down how. First, there is the machine itself. The Liebherr LR 11350, rented from Brazil's biggest rental firm Locar, had an insured value of 9 million euros. In the collapse, it wasn't just damaged, it was utterly destroyed. Its main boom and luffing jib were shattered, its superstructure warped beyond repair. The slewing ring was ripped from its mounting. Zurich Insurance paid the total loss claim in full. Second is the direct damage and repair. The crane and its 420 metric ton load didn't fall on an empty patch of dirt. They fell on a 94% complete state-of-the-art stadium. It pulverized structural columns, destroyed rows of seating, and obliterated the massive multi-million-dollar LED panel that ran across the facade. The repairs required specialist teams to work around the clock, carefully cutting and removing the mangled steel wreckage without compromising the rest of the undamaged structure. Odebrecht's audited accounts list this cleanup and rebuild at $11 million. Finally, there are the project delays and overheads. The accident brought the entire $430 million project to a grinding halt. The site was partially interdicted by investigators. The FIFA deadline was shattered, pushing handover from the 31st of December to the 15th of April, and triggering a frantic phase of expedited work that cost millions more in overtime, air-freighted materials, and logistical chaos. Odebrecht, the primary contractor, later banned for corruption under Operation Car Wash, faced intense legal and financial scrutiny. When you add the insured crane, the structural repairs, and the crippling project delays, the $48 million figure isn't just plausible. It's a stark accounting of the price of a single, flawed decision. It's a reminder that in heavy construction, the most expensive thing you can possibly do is rush. The cost of a rain delay would have been nothing. The cost of ignoring it was catastrophic. In the aftermath, the recriminations were immediate. How could this happen at the world's most watched construction site? The investigation involved multiple parties, from the Brazilian authorities to the crane manufacturer itself. Liebherr flew its own team of engineers from Germany to inspect the wreckage. Their conclusion was unequivocal. The LR 11350 had no mechanical defects. The crane performed exactly as it was designed to until the physical laws of stability were violated. The company's statement was clear. The ground was unsuitable and unable to carry the combined weight of the crane and the suspended load. An independent expert hired by investigators came to the same conclusion. When investigators recovered the crane's data logger, they made a frustrating discovery. The LICCON data logger had not recorded since November 2012. This left no digital record of the operator's final actions, though it was irrelevant to the cause. The physics of the ground failure were plain to see. The official technical report confirmed it. The catastrophe was caused by one single fundamental factor: a subsidence of the ground beneath the crane's right side crawler. The days of heavy rain had dangerously reduced the soil's bearing capacity. The ground, which may have held the load perfectly well when dry, became a slurry. The immense pressure of the crane and its load was simply too much for the saturated earth to bear. This is the tragic heart of the story. The failure was not mechanical, it was procedural. It was a failure of judgment. A union leader claimed a safety engineer warned. Odebrecht and Corinthians denied it, but the project was suffering from go fever. The immense, immovable deadline of the World Cup created a powerful cognitive bias, where the desire to complete the mission overrides the small, nagging warnings of danger. The decision was made to gamble that the ground was good enough. They were tragically wrong. The collapse sent a shockwave through the global construction industry, and it became a dark symbol of Brazil's chaotic World Cup preparations. It served as a brutal, multi-million-dollar case study in the absolute, non-negotiable importance of ground preparation. It doesn't matter if you have a €9 million insured crane and the world's best operator. It doesn't matter if you have successfully completed 38 identical lifts. Every single lift is its own event. And the most critical component of all is the one you don't even see: the ground. We began by saying the truth was buried just inches below the surface. And it was. A foundation of saturated soil whose bearing capacity was never rechecked after days of rain. The 2 lives lost are a permanent, solemn warning written in twisted steel. The only question left is, in the face of billion-dollar contracts and impossible timelines, have we truly learned to listen to the man on the ground warning about the rain? The São Paulo collapse was a devastating failure of the most basic rule in lifting: know your foundation. A 1,350 metric ton crane was toppled not by a flaw in the steel, but by unstable mud. A gamble to meet a deadline that cost $48 million and 2 human lives. Thanks for watching Hard Hat Industries, your source for serious machines doing real work. If you like this, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. Until then, keep your head down and your gear running.